gratitude can also be about taking action so that our resentment is addressed. And I call that a gratitude practice. We do need to also address our resentment, because where there's resentment often has the stronger pull. Sure. And it pulls at us because it's known as an emotion of justice, and we feel deeply wronged by a situation. For example, a PhD supervisor who's neglectful and who doesn't read our work for 3 months, or just gives us one-line answer feedback. That's enough to cause a lot of resentment. And so gratitude isn't about being grateful for that necessarily. That's really hard, because what needs to be done is to address our resentment and to take action so that we don't continue in that state of resentment. And at the same time, growing our gratitude somewhere else can give us the resilience to be able to face our resentment and unpack it and address it, rather than being consumed by it. So there's a constant interplay between gratitude and resentment.
So is that what you mean? Because I remember you said something, you've said a couple of times about taking action. So that's the action, is facing the resentment or whatever other negative emotion you're having. Is that the action part of that?
Yeah, that's the action part of it. Okay. So we often think about gratitude as being grateful for being alive, or expressing gratitude to people we like, etc. But this is much deeper than that, in that gratitude can also be about taking action so that our resentment is addressed. And I call that a gratitude practice, because resentment is so tricky and so hard because we've been deeply hurt. And so we don't just take one action, because it's unrealistic to think it can be solved just by one action, just like it is by one thought or one feeling. It needs to be something that we practice over time. So, for example, if we're having conflict in our workplace and we're at stalemate with one of our colleagues, and we feel like they've really hurt us, but nothing's changing. So if we take the courageous and humble move of saying, well, I'm going to take action because something needs to shift here, and we might greet them in the mornings, for example, or refrain from backbiting them because we're really hurt, and that's a natural way to go about it. Or we choose to smile at them, even if it's just in the form to start with. That's a gratitude action, because we're moving, because gratitude and resentment are opposites. Every time we move away from resentment, we're taking a move towards gratitude.
Okay, and that so really makes it clear. Yeah, that really makes it easy to visualize how that would play out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and and we'll kind of chat about your new book as well very shortly. But even as I was kind of thinking then about what you were saying, it kind of almost feels like it has parallels. This gratitude practice to to Stoicism and like Socratic ways of thinking. Which is, even when you're in that really dire situation where things are not going well, and you can still sit there, and I suppose, Socrates would say, well, okay, just be grateful that it's not worse than it is now. It could always be worse than it is. And who knows how this is going to play out in the long run, even though it's not going well now. So I think that's the kind of, which is what I really like about, you need to acknowledge the resentment that you have in that moment. But there's always a path forward, which is gratitude. So I think it's a very optimistic and nice way of thinking, which is probably what we need now, given we're in a pandemic. So
yes, yeah. That's why this work is very popular at the moment.
Yeah.
But I must, if you don't mind, Adam, I'd like to draw a distinction here, given that you're using the Socratic method. Let's just be Socrates for a little while. I really think it's important for your listeners to draw the distinction between gratitude and optimism and positive thinking and positive acknowledgement or praise, for example, because even though they can be expressions of gratitude, gratitude is the inherent difference, and it's a really important one, is that gratitude is about acknowledging what I have received from another person or another situation, and then being motivated to give back. So it's this constant giving and receiving cycle. And whereas positive thinking, optimism can just be about our feelings or about it's a one-way kind of thing. Gratitude is inherently social, relational, connected to the world. And that's why it has such a potentially such a transformative force in helping us not settle for difficult relationships, or not settle for a feeling inside us where there's conflict, because it is really activated by the relationships in our lives. So I want us to move away from the individual notion of gratitude and move more towards the relational, even though it often starts with the individual. I think it's truly transformative force potential in society is in the relational.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I definitely have always thought of gratitude, I suppose, as an individual practice. So it is nice. It's challenging my thinking, and I've just got to get my head around the relational piece. So thank you for clarifying, because I imagine a lot of people are still viewing gratitude as something you sit down, you do yourself, you don't do with others. So it's fascinating.
And at the same time, to acknowledge that's where, like, to acknowledge people's own definition of gratitude. I'm just bringing my own thinking to the process, because I don't want us to replace that. It's our own definition of gratitude is often deeply entrenched in our socio-historical religious background. And so we've got to honour that at the same time. But this is an invitation, if we're going to really consciously apply it, this is an invitation to really step into the really huge potential of gratitude in our relationships, and to not stop with just feeling it for ourselves.
Yeah.